Welcome to another episode of Crimes Notes. Today we're going to be talking about how to graph inequalities. But the first thing that I want to do is review what is an inequality. Remember, this means more than, less than or equal to, or more than or equal to. And we talked about it last time. To remember, less than looks like your left hand. So if you put your left hand down on the table and you see this, one, it looks like an L, so you left hand less than, and then if you turn it sideways, it makes the symbol. So if we're looking at this one, this is the one that means less than. And then when it has this bar underneath, that means equal to, because if you think about it, an equal sign is two straight bars. So they're saying it's less than or equal to. So this is less than or equal to, which I didn't really leave enough room to write. Sorry. So then that means this is more than or greater than. So it could also be greater than. And this would be greater than or equal to. So this is kind of the reminder. The part that we don't know is over here. So if I have a less than or a greater than, notice it doesn't have the equal to underneath. That means we're going to graph with an open circle. And I know that doesn't make sense right now, but right now we just need to write it down. We're going to graph with an open circle. If it has the equal to, meaning the solid bar underneath, then we're going to graph with a solid circle. Or you can call it a closed circle. But again, solid line underneath means solid circle when we graph. So let's look at this graphing and see what we can come up with. So if they gave us the phrase x is greater than or equal to 2, we want to write an inequality that would match that. So x greater than or equal to, so we know that's this one, if we look up here, is greater than or equal to 2. So now how do I graph that? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is look at the sign and notice, am I going to use an open circle or a closed circle? Well, it has the solid line underneath, so that means I'm going to do a closed circle. So somewhere on this graph, I'm going to go ahead and put a closed circle. And then the number that goes underneath it is always the number that's in the problem. So I would put 2. Then from here, I have to decide where to shade, to the right or to the left. So the easiest thing to do is to pick a test number. So let's say every time I'm going to use a test number of 100, and 100 is way up here. So I'm going to plug 100 in for x. Is 100 greater than 2? The answer is yes. That means I'm going to shade towards 100. If the answer is no, then I'm going to shade away. So 100 is bigger than 2. So that means I'm going to shade towards 100, which also means we are shading towards numbers that are bigger than 2. So the next one says x is less than or equal to -4. And the way I read it is the same way we would write it. So the first thing we see is x. So x is, then we look at the symbol. That would be this one. So less than or equal to. And then I look at the number, -4. So now we have to decide to graph. Again, we're going to look at the symbol. If it has the solid line underneath, we're supposed to use a solid circle. So I'm going to use a solid circle and I'm going to label it -4. And then I'm going to try this test number. So let's put it up here. So if I put my test number in, is 100 less than or equal to -4? Well, this time the answer is no. So this time it was yes, this time it was no. So that means instead of going towards the 100, I'm going to go away, where the numbers are actually less than -4. Good. So this time, if you notice, they didn't give me the words or the inequality, they only gave me the graph. So the first thing that I need to look at is this. So I've got an open circle. So here's my open circle. So that means I'm either using less than or greater than 5. Well, did I go towards bigger numbers or smaller numbers? Well, again, if I put my test number up here, 100 is bigger than 5, and I went towards bigger numbers. So that means this was a yes. So that means I would say x is greater than 5. And then I would write the same thing. X is greater than 5. Good. So I'm going to leave these 3 for you guys to do. Let's jump down to the bottom where it says reverse inequalities. So here we're going to do the same thing, but now it says 5, so I've got to write the 5 first, is greater than or equal to. Again, you could look at the top if you need to, but this is greater than or equal to x. So if you notice, this time the x is on the other side, but I'm still not going to change what I'm doing. So I still look at the symbol to determine open circle or closed circle. It has a solid line, so I'm going to put a closed circle on my graph. And then I'm still going to put the number that I see, so 5. So then let's try our test number. So if I put 100 in here, is 5 greater than or equal to 100? No, it's not. So that means I need to go away from the 100. Good. So then this one, if we were to read it, says -12. Then if we look, this looks like my left hand. So this is less than x. So -12 is less than x. And now we would go to graph. We look at the symbol for open or closed. It does not have the line underneath. So I would do an open circle. And then this is -12, so I would label it -12. And now I'm going to use that test number of 100. Is -12 less than 100? Yes. So since it's yes, that means we shade towards the 100. Okay? So then you guys can do those bottom two. Let's go ahead and flip over onto the back where we're going to work on some combinations. So here is compound inequalities, meaning we have either the word and or the word or. So here this says x is less than 3 or x is greater than or equal to 6. Well, if it says or, that means we're going to have two separate inequalities. If it says and, that means we're going to have one combined inequality. So here, this is an or, so we're just going to read the first one and write x is less than, again, you can look at your chart if you need to, 3, or x is greater than or equal to, so that's this one, 6. So if you notice, I kind of gave you separate graphs, but we're really going to end up with this as a final answer. So I'd look at the symbol, This tells me to use an open circle. So open circle, let's label it 3. And then we can use my test number. So if I put in the 100, is 100 less than 3? We would say no. So we're going to shade away. And then we would go to this one. This does have the solid bar. That means I'm going to put a solid dot. And if you notice, I did put 6 higher than 3. So then we would use the test number. Is 100 greater than or equal to 6? We would say yes. So then we would shade towards the 100. So then once I have the separate pieces, the last part is actually to put it together for the final answer. So here would be my open circle with 3 and my closed circle with 6, and these would go away from each other. So here and here. Now, one thing to note, when you're doing compound inequalities, they're either both going to go away or they're both going to go towards, so that you either shade in between or on the outsides. You will not have it where both of them go to the right. So if you get that, you know you messed up somewhere. All right, so on this one, they kind of gave us our graph, so we need to read it. Remember here, it goes to the left, so that's our less than. So this would be x is less than -1. Notice I didn't put the bar underneath because this was an open circle. Then here we're going to put or, and then this is solid, and we go to numbers that are bigger. So this would be x is greater than or equal to, because it's filled in, 3. So when they put it together, we have x is less than -1 or x is greater than 3. So x is less than -1 or x is greater than or equal to 3. Good. All right, so I'm going to leave this last or for you to do. Let's go down to an and. On the ands, remember we said we're going to have one combined inequality. So again, if I read -1 is less than or equal to x, and, so I'm not going to write it again, x is less than 3. So when you see the and, that's how we know we're going to do a compound inequality. So I can still do it as 2 separate graphs. We're only going to read the left side first. So -1, I have less than or equal to. So this is going to be a solid dot. Here's -1, and then here's my test number. So if I put that test number in, -1 is less than 100. That is true. So that means I would go towards the 100. Good. So now we read this side. X is less than 3. So I'm going to use an open circle. I would put 3. Here's that test number. Is 100 less than 3? Yes, it is. Oh, sorry. No, it's not. 100 is not less than 3. Sorry, somebody knocked at the door and distracted me. So that means I would go this way. But when I go to do my graph, if you notice, I talked about how they end up crisscrossing, but I'm saying that x has to be between the -1 and the 3. So when I graph, here's the -1, here's the 3. Of course, the bell would ring, sorry. So then we're going to graph in between, because I have to be this way of the -1 and this way of the -3. So together, this would be the answer. Good. So I'm going to kind of use these. These are just setups. Remember, this is the actual answer I'm looking for. So I'm going to go down here to this final answer. I've got -5 with an open circle, and I've got 15, and we shaded between. When we shade between, that's how we know that it's an and not an or. So I'm going to do a combined. So I've got -5. I know I'm going to have an x in the middle, and I'm going to have a 15. Well, 15 is always going to be bigger than this. So we're going to say -5, we're going to use less than, because it's less than 15, and then less than or equal to. And ands will always have less than symbols here. If it ends up with greater than symbols, then you know it's actually an or. So here, -5, 15, x is shaded between. This is a solid dot, so we use the solid line. This was an open dot, so this was an open. And then we would read this left to write it. So -5 is less than x, and x is less than or equal to 15. Good. So I'm going to leave those last three for you guys to do.